Shalom, and welcome to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. This is a recording of a Shabbat teaching with Rabbi Rebecca Schatz.
So one thing that I've always learned is to listen to my teachers. So last week, Rabbi Dr. Michael Berenbaum talked about Pirkei Avot and challenged us that we've never taught Pirkei Avot during the Omer. And so I said, you know what? We're going to continue doing Pirkei Avot during the Omer. So that's what we're doing. We're going to look at chapter 5 of Pirkei Avot. We actually, when I was an intern, we did used to do Pirkei Avot, not just during the Omer, but in general, we used to use Pirkei Avot as a text of study through different periods of time, usually during parshiot that were not as robust in narrative. So not specifically to the Omer, but as a mode of study. So you could look at this in your Sidur. We are not going to look through all of chapter 5. I chose the different Mishnayot in chapter 5 that were interesting to me and that I thought might be interesting to you. There are many. So we're not going to look through all of them, and we might not even get through all of the ones that I put on this sheet. But I'm going to pass this sheet out, or you can look in your Sidur. So first of all, I want to just share that on May 22nd, which was yesterday, right? 2 days ago. Thursday, thank you. I have no idea what day it is. 2 days ago was the 8th anniversary of when I became a rabbi, which sounds both not long ago and feels like a lifetime. But the reason I bring that up is because one student is asked to present Torah on behalf of the class. And I was asked to be the speaker, and the text that I was given that my classmates chose was actually Pirkei Avot, chapter 4, the first Mishnah, which is Ezehu Chacham Halomen Mikol Adam. And it keeps on going, and that was one of the ones that Rabbi Berenbaum brought last week. But I just wanted to point out that part of what is so interesting and so compelling about Pirkei Avot is that you could read it if you would like to as quotables, right? Very easy, understandable, fully digestible pieces of wisdom. And as we experienced last week, and hopefully you'll experience a little bit more today, you can go very deeply into each of these seemingly easy to understand nuggets of wisdom and really get something quite profound out of them. So even though when we're reading them today, it might seem very, not surface level, but not as deep as like a Gemara that you might need to flesh out, there really is a lot of wisdom in these different quotable pieces of our Mishnah. Just one more piece on this, and then we'll get in. One more, as Rabbi Berenbaum said today when he was talking about his granddaughter, one more part, and then I'll get to the introduction. But there is a sense that Pirkei Avot, by the way, Pirkei Avot is part of the Mishnah. Some people think that it's like this thing outside of the Mishnah. It is in the Mishnah. It is part of the Mishnah. If you were to open a book of Mishnah, or the particular krich, the particular book that this part of Mishnah is found in, it's in the Mishnah. It's not its own separate thing. We often think of it as being separate because it doesn't sound as like halachically connected as the other pieces of Mishnah that you might find. But it is in the Mishnah. And many pieces of Torah or Jewish wisdom that you know probably come from Pirkei Avot. Little like one-liners. One of them we're going to get to later today, and a few others that we'll see in just a second, and others that are in the other chapters of Pirkei Avot. There are 6 chapters of Pirkei Avot. We are doing chapter 5. Last week we looked at chapter 4 with Rabbi Berenbaum. And next week, whoever is on, if they choose, they can do chapter 6 before Shavuot on Sunday night. Okay, so I brought you, I think, 8. I brought you 8 different Mishnayot from Pirkei Avot. I did not bring all of them, but I brought 8. So we're going to just start from the beginning. I brought no commentaries I wanted you all to be the commentators. I wanted you to ask the questions and share your wisdom on these different pieces. Some of these you will have heard of before. Some of these will hopefully be new to you, but I wanted to share them nonetheless. Okay, chapter 5, Mishnah 6. By the way, when you quote Mishnah, it is Mishnah. It's the 5th chapter of the Mishnah, but it's also called a Mishnah. So it's not a verse. The 6th Mishnah is what we're looking at right now. Okay. V'asara dvarim nivaru be'erev Shabbat bein hashmashot. Has anybody ever heard of this time period, bein hashmashot? Okay, what's bein hashmashot? Yeah.
Literally between the sun, between twilight.
Okay, great. So between the suns, twilight, it's also known as like this very magical time, right? It's supposed to be this time that we believe that things that are particularly connected, whether to God or just something miraculous, often happen during Bein Hashmashot, during this kind of in-between time, moving from one period of day into the other. And yeah, go ahead.
Those of us who were in shul this morning.
Yes.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah, good.
This chapter is all built on the number
10, right. Yeah, good. Thank you. Thank you for pointing that out.
Now gone up by 3.
Yeah, right, exactly. Thank you. So Rabbi Berenbaum's pointing out that for those of us who were at shul earlier today, we heard a lot about 7. This chapter, and I'm sorry that I forgot to say this chapter is built upon different things that happened in the category of the number 10. Not everything, but many of the Mishnayot talk about the number 10 and different things that happened in 10s. Okay. So these are the 10 things. I'm gonna just read these in English, just because much of the Hebrew will not be known to you, which is fine. Some of it is nuanced. So these are the 10 things. The mouth of the earth. When do we experience the mouth of the earth in the Torah? Korach, exactly. The mouth of the well. Who's that?
Miriam?
Oh, interesting. Yonah. But Miriam is, I think, who they're referring to. But that's a very interesting connection in the Jonah story. The mouth of the donkey. Okay, good. The rainbow. Good. Manna. Good. Manna. The staff of Moshe. What does he do with it? Yeah, lots of things, right? He uses it for the plagues, and it's this miraculous tool that's used. The shamir. This is one that's usually that people aren't necessarily sure of. What's the shamir? No. Yes. Yeah. Good. It's this very bizarre worm that we hear about. I forget what parsha it's in, but when we're hearing about this engraving, especially when having to do with the tabernacle, with the mikdash, so the shamir is this worm thing, potentially an actual worm, potentially more of a magical thing like the rest that we're talking about. The letters. What letters are we talking about here? Yeah, the letters of Torah, right? The letters that are engraved on our Torah. The writing is also probably Torah, and the tablets also the 10 Commandments / our Torah. And some say also the demons, the grave of Moshe and the ram of Avraham, our father, and during the Akedah. And some also say tongs made with tongs. This is like when I was in middle school, we learned about this, and this was one of my favorite things that stuck with me from middle school. Why tongs? Yeah, because you can't touch certain things, and also you can't make tongs unless you have tongs. So when were the first tongs made? Well, obviously during Bein Hashmashot, right? It's a very funny idea. They're like all these really magical, beautiful things in the Torah, and then also tongs that you used to serve salad last night, right? So it's these really magical spiritual things, and also these mundane things that we just can't imagine how else they were created. Any questions or thoughts about this? Anything that isn't on this list that you could have imagined being on this list during a Bein Hashmashot time? Well, why do you think demons might be connected to these other pieces? How do we refer to demons in our Torah? We actually are scared of demons in our Torah, not because of what we think demons are, but because we don't understand them, right? And so most of this was actually something that was in Lev Kligfeld's Bar Mitzvah Parsha, And, before he wrote the drash, he had like 75 other drashot he could have given. And one of them was talking about demons. And this idea that God actually tells our people to stay away from the demons, and magical things in general, not because something bad could happen, though that's how we refer to demons in today's day, but because we didn't understand what they were. And so God wanted us to stay away from them to make sure that we weren't somehow influenced by something that wasn't going to connect us back to our tradition.
Where are demons
Yeah.
referred to in Tanakh?
Well, they are I forget the exact word. They are in Parashat Mishpatim. I forget the word, but it's in Parashat Mishpatim. General, like magical, what's the word I'm looking for? Yes, exactly. Thank you for providing me the word. Yeah.
We also use demons for things we can't understand. I walked with my wife this afternoon, and she said two things happened which were very mundane. One is the dryer stopped working.
Sure.
And then she found that the flap was closed, and she didn't understand how the flap could be closed after.
We should all go on walks with Melissa. This is all very exciting. Yeah.
And then the other thing that happened is something else didn't work, and all of a sudden it fixed itself and the like. So she said, "What's the explanation of that?" I said, "Well, the dibble gunning." Which means when you can't understand something,
Sure.
you say, the demons got it.
Right, and I think that that's actually speaking very much to this, that when we don't understand how something could have happened, or, when we talk about a talking donkey in our Torah, or when we talk about manna falling from the sky, we can talk about it, but if a small preschool child, because they're very good at these questions, comes up to you and says, how? The answer is, I don't know. Right? We have no idea, right? We have no clue how manna came from we can make things up, but how manna came from the sky, why there was a talking donkey, why this worm had to be the thing that did all the engraving. We have no clue. No one does, right? And so there's something magical. And so, so to a dryer not working, this idea that all of a sudden, if something then can be explained or changes course, well, that must have been something magical. Some demon or something higher power must have gotten involved, and that's how it came to be. Yeah, Dio.
I find the burning bush conspiracy answer.
Yes, beautiful. So when I teach this, often that is something that people mention not being here, right? Because similarly, that is a phenomenon that now many people have tried to describe define and to be able to explain through science. However, when we think about God in a burning bush that's not burning, so that's a very similar category to all these other things. I think that the staff, which has nothing to do with the burning bush, but I think that kind of encompasses this general magical existence of Moshe. But you're right that it's very much missing from this. Yeah.
To me, the staff is downstream of the bush.
Interesting. Yeah.
Connection starts with the bush.
Sure. Yeah, Marshall.
I just want to comment in terms of number.
Yeah.
If you're using Siddur,
Yeah.
that the numbers in the Siddur are two Mishnayot after what you have on the list here.
Oh, really?
So, for example, if you showed like Mishnah 5, chapter 5, Mishnah 6,
Yeah.
in the Siddur itself, it's shown as Mishnah 8.
Really? Oh, fascinating. Is Mishnah 10 the same in your Siddur? Really?
Mishnah 10 in the Siddur will be number 12.
Oh, so they're all off by 2. Huh, this is straight from Safaria, so I don't know. I'll have to look into that. That's really interesting. Someone's wrong, but I don't know. I'm happy to take the blame, but I don't know who it is. That's very interesting. Thank you for pointing that out. Okay. All right, let's look at Mishnah 10 on this sheet and Mishnah 12, I guess, in your Siddur. Arba midot ba'adam. What are midot? Yeah, characteristics or types of people. When we say, what is your midah, what is the value, right? At Camp Ramah, we always assigned to every Eidah a midah. Every group of kids had a midah, had a characteristic to really focus on for the summer. One that says, sheli, sheli, mine is mine, and yours is yours, shelcha, shelcha. Right? That's a very, what age human being does that sound like? developmentally? Yeah, like a toddler, right? Someone probably not yet in school, like 3 to 6, right? A kid that's still dealing very much with like black and white. Well, this is mine. That's why sharing is so hard at those ages. This is mine and that is yours. If that's yours, I'm not going to touch it unless you tell me that I can. And this is mine, so you better not touch it unless I tell you that you can. Okay? By the way, this is not
You added to the character
of the first kid.
Yeah, you're saying, and I'm not going to touch yours. That's not exactly.
That's true. That's true.
That's exactly not mine.
That's true. That's fair. That's fair. That's fair.
You're just being kind.
I was. That's true. It's an ideal. Okay, so this is a commonplace type, and some say that this is a Sodom type of character. So when they say Sodom, what are they talking about? Sodom and Gomorrah, right? They're talking about a story from our Torah. Sheli shelcha veshelcha sheli. There's a kids song, by the way, that you sing with this. Sheli shelcha shelcha sheli. Okay, anyway. That mine is yours and yours is mine, right? This sounds like partnership, right? That yes, there might be something that is mine. I might have been the one to buy the groceries, but I am buying it so that we can eat that food together. Mine is yours and yours is also mine. Okay? That's an unlearned person, which is a really interesting way of saying someone who doesn't know, that they're calling them an am haaretz, right? Someone who's just like a general human. I think unlearned is actually unfair, but this is a person who's just a regular guy, right? Who understands like how to share, but also understands when things are theirs and things are someone else's. Correct.
What did he say?
There's no idea of property and personal ownership. Right.
Sounds like communism to me.
Right. Okay. So sounds like communism to Brandt. That's good. And also, right, there are maybe lack of boundaries, or at least a very good understanding of how those boundaries are blurred. Right. So if we're gonna try to be generous. I'm a kind person. What can I say? Okay, and then the next one is shali shelcha veshelcha shelcha, which is a chassid. So mine is yours and yours is yours. So why do we categorize this as a person who is a chassid, a person who is full of loving kindness, who does good things in the world, supposedly? Okay, only cares about others, right? Everything that is mine is also yours, but anything that is yours does not also have to be mine. It's yours. Yeah, maybe no strings, or at least a fully giving and not expecting anything in return.
It's very much like a vow of poverty.
Oh, interesting.
What's mine is yours.
Uh-huh.
What's yours is also yours. So I don't have anything that is.
Interesting. So maybe in a world in which someone is willing to give so much that,
Especially in the ancient world, no industrialization.
Uh-huh.
Like food being scarce, hard to come by.
yeah. Right. This actually, it's funny that you said food is scarce. This actually reminds me a lot of Shemitah, which is what we just read about in this past week's Parsha. But just this idea that during a time when the land can't be yours, right, that people who can benefit from it, from outside, whether outside of their religion or outside of that land, it can be theirs, right? But they also still can have their own crops, right? If they're not mandated to follow by the Shemitah. Okay. Then the last one is sheli veshelcha sheli, and that's a rasha. Right. Mine is mine and yours is mine. Okay? So that's a toddler, right? Exactly. Right. So now when we say wicked, what's interesting about this, and I those of you who were with me on Pesach or have heard me talk about Pesach before know that I often describe the rasha of the 4 children as being, I think, the most interesting character, and actually not bad at all, but rather really compelling and someone to listen to. And in this particular case, I also don't think it's bad. It's just this is, to me, this is ignorant, right? This is or naive, or however you want to say it. This is a person that just assumes that they have to hold on to everything that is theirs, because as soon as you share, you lose everything, which is obviously not how we want the world to work, and definitely not how we help people in the world, right? Because if we keep everything to ourselves, then people who, to Brian's point, people who are, yeah, like a dictatorship, right? Right. If people don't have anything, then they're not being helped by anybody, right? Because you just keep everything to yourself, and then people who are just down in the dumps stay down in the dumps, and they don't get to be helped. Right, Baron Palmer, are you going to say something?
This is somebody who absolutely knows no boundaries.
Right. Right. Exactly.
I want every wish and manifestations. This, political world, I want this, I want this, I want this.
Totally. Right. Right. So a type of dictatorship, and also a type of like power hungriness, right? Well, this is what I want, and I'm not going to worry about what anybody else cares. I'm just going to keep this all to myself. Brent.
Don't you think that these four things are not really what people are about? I mean, I think you could argue that these are extreme. And
Oh,
what
sure.
we are as people is exhibiting traits of all of these.
Mm-hmm.
And that a person that would maybe be held in higher regard would do more of some than of others. But
Sure.
nobody is completely mine is mine, yours is mine. If they are, then those are essentially the odd ducks, the criminals, things like that.
Sure.
But most people are not one of these. Most people are a combination of these in various ways.
Totally, 100%. And I think that, to go back to the four children of Pesach for a second, I think that's the same there, right? We're not ever, for our entire lives, unless we're sociopaths, one of these things for the entirety of our existence. The way in which we understand going through life and experiencing life and needing to change our behaviors because of it is to live all of these things at some point.
But we're also not pure archetypes. In other words,
Right.
I can think of times where all four things characterize me.
Totally. Well, that's what Brandt's saying. Yeah. Yeah.
And we're not a complete archetype.
Right.
Sometimes we're giving without boundaries, and sometimes keep off my
Lawn, yeah.
And I can go through the day having each of these.
Right, and I think that's what Brandt is getting at. That's exactly right. Okay, there are lots of hands all of a sudden. Seth was first. Yeah.
Brief anecdote.
Yeah.
So mine is yours and yours is yours.
Yeah.
Immediately made me think of what a guy who really follow this in Slack, probably like the short version of the point of Kabbalah, which means receiving.
Yeah.
Is to kind of transcend through learning Torah and learning God's wisdom.
Uh-huh.
I don't know.
It's okay. You're explaining Kabbalah exactly right, with a lot of, I don't know, maybe, sure, yeah, that seems right. Yeah.
Kind of the point is to emulate Hashem and not being wanting or needy,
Yeah.
not needing to receive,
Yeah.
and giving, because Hashem gives and does not need to receive. Omer.
Yeah, beautiful. Right, and I think that's part of the reason, actually, that when we talk about sacrifices in the Torah, the Hebrew word for sacrifices is a drawing close. It's not a giving, actually. The word is not to give. I mean, there is a type of sacrifice that is called giving, but the idea of sacrificial experience was that drawing close, because we do not believe necessarily that God really needs the cow that I bring and that I'm going to barbecue, but rather that I need that connection. And so this is a gift. This is a way in to that connection to God. Yeah, beautiful. Okay, Alan. Yeah. Yeah.
There's another midrash that says it's not me before. You're like one person.
Right. Correct. The Rabbinical Assembly. Yeah, the Rabbinical Assembly Haggadah actually does a beautiful job of illustrating that midrash. I don't see it in here. Oh, is that it? It's really beautiful. I'm sure many of you have seen it, even if not in that particular Haggadah. It's a picture. There are four, but there's each person depicted in illustrative kind of colors and shapes, has 4 different colors making up its different parts of its body. So like one body has a red head, the other body has an orange head, the other body has a blue head, the other body has a green. I don't know if those are the colors, but, and then they go throughout, and each of the different bodies has those 4 colors within them, but in different parts of their body, illustrating exactly that it might not even have been 4 different people, but rather one person who, at different times in their life, I like to, as an educator, I like to describe the 4 children in the Pesach Seder as 4 different types of development, but 4 different stages of life, 4 different opportunities of expression throughout the day, perhaps. Yeah.
Rabbi?
Oh, sure. Yep.
It's my virtual background right now. The image you were just talking about. I don't know if people can see it.
We can't, but thank you so much. I'm sure that the people on Zoom can. Okay. So we're going to, just because of the time, I want us to turn to the next page. So we're not going to look at 12 and 13, but we're going to look on the other side. Okay, Mishnah 14. I don't know which Mishnah this is in your Siddur, if it's off count still, but this is it. Arba midot behoche leveit hamidrash. So there are 4 different types of people, let's say, who go to a Beit Midrash, who go to a house of study. Holech ve'eno oseh, a person who goes and doesn't do anything. So what does that sound like to you? I'm not asking you to name names, but what does that sound like to you in terms of a category of a person? Holech a whole range of charedim. Yeah, exactly. Right? So we're not name calling, but we are saying that there are types of people who sit in a Beit Midrash, who learn a lot of things and then leave the Beit Midrash and don't do any of those things, right? Who don't put their money where their mouth is, so to speak. Oh, who go but don't study. Oh, okay. To have, got it. Okay, great. So there's also that. Yeah. So there's also that, right? People who go to be in maybe the communal aspect or to get away from whatever else they should be doing in life, and they show up, but they're not actually learning. They're not doing anything while they're in the Beit Midrash. Schar halicha beyado. That person receives a reward for actually showing up, right? Which, by the way, if we're going to hone in on this Haredi narrative for a second, that is what happens, right? Haredim in Israel who are going to a Beit Midrash all day are receiving compensation for doing that learning. Okay. Oseh ve'eno holech. So ones that practice but do not attend. And those people, schar ma'aseh beyado, they receive a reward for their practice. So whereas the first category of people is receiving a reward for showing up, these people are receiving a reward for the practice that they're doing. So this would be someone, well, actually, let me ask you, what kind of person is this? It doesn't have to be a group of people, but what kind of person is this? A person who does, I'm going to use the word stuff, which is a really high level English word, but doesn't actually go to the Beit Midrash. Okay, an activist, yeah.
Humanistic, good things.
Great.
Don't pray and do that.
Okay.
That Judaism comprises doing good. Well thing.
Great. So someone who knows a tutor.
Yeah,
Great. So someone who knows what to do and knows what the right things are to do to make the world a better place, to make people better, whatever that is, but they're not actually learning where that might come from in our text. They might not be learning what that means or how to do it potentially, but they are doing it. They are out in the world doing it. Okay, holech ve'oseh chasid. So this is pretty easy to understand. The highest level of what a person should do is that you go and you also do stuff, right? That you are going, you're learning, you're understanding, then you're also bringing that out in the world to do wonderful things. Lo holech ve'lo oseh rasha. So a person who does not go and who does not do anything, they're a bad person. Now, I wouldn't categorize them, again, I guess I just don't like the word Russia. But I won't categorize them as evil, right? They're just not taking advantage necessarily of the connection that they have to a religion or a community, right? They're not doing anything towards the values that their religion is giving to them. And they're also not learning about those values or the connection that they could have. So they're just kind of not affiliated. What?
People who don't vote.
Sure, like people who don't vote. Right. That's also true. Yeah, Brian?
I realize as a rabbinical student that the love of Torah is its own reward, but he who attends and practices, he's a pious man, he's got the reward.
Good.
For attending, you have the reward for practicing.
Good. So what Brian's pointing out is that these last two categories don't actually have a reward, right? But that they are giving these titles of their own either demise or reward, right? So the chassid is seen as this high level, really highly considered human being, whereas the Rasha is not, right? But there is no actual reward. There's no money that is coming to this person in terms of the reward for their deeds. Okay. Yeah, Marshall. Yes. Yeah. Correct. Yes. Correct. Yeah. Good.
I find it instructive for myself. I have to read the English.
Yeah.
When I doubt it, because I find it enriches.
Totally. Sure.
And here, the Hasid is described as one of the saintly.
Yeah.
But the Rasha is described as a scoundrel. Not the term evil.
Interesting.
Evil mean,
Yeah, great. Right, and one of the things that Marshall's pointing out, that when I was teaching sixth grade Mishnah, I would tell the students all the time, Mishnah, unlike Torah and unlike Gemara actually, was written in such a way that there was repetition so that you could learn it and remember it better. So what Marshall's pointing out here is at the end of these two Mishnayot that we just read is the same, not in content, but in form, because they wanted people who were learning the Mishnah, mostly orally, right, until it was written down, to be able to remember these different categories of people, given the different things that we've been talking about, but remember these different categories of people and be able to map them on with these vocabulary words, basically, onto those different people to remember it more clearly. So thank you for pointing that out, Marshall. Okay, we're going to do one more, and then we'll do Birkat. So we're going to do the one that's all the way at the end, though I just want to say two things about the two in the middle that we're going to skip. Mishnah 15, or whatever number it is in your Siddur, is a fascinating Mishnah, especially if you're someone who's taught before. This is all about differentiated learning and how everybody learns differently and how everyone needs to be taught differently because of the way that they learn. So I just want to point out that the way that it's set up is that it says, Beyoshvim lifnei chachamim, the ones that sit before the sages. And the reason that it's said that way is not to say this is how teachers need to teach. The reason I think it's formatted this way is because you need to recognize the students that are in front of you, right? So you don't teach the same to every student. You have to recognize who the student is and then teach to that student, which I find brilliant. The next Mishnah that we're going to skip is Mishnah 21, or again, I don't know what it is in your Siddur, but this one is the Fiddler on the Roof Mishnah, right? At 3, I started Hebrew school. At 10, I learned a trade. Doesn't actually say that here, but it goes through all the different ages, and it tells you what you should be doing at the different ages. And I'll just point out that it's a really interesting, I'm sure Rabbi Birnbaum could say much more to this historical point than I can. It's really interesting to see what was happening at these different ages than if you map it onto our ages today. Right, even 10 years old, right, or 5 or 13 makes sense because of bar bat mitzvah, but some of these do not map onto the same ages that we think of them today, and so I just want to point that out as well as just a sociological Mishnah, as well as it is interesting. Yeah. Right. Exactly. Right. As if there's. Yeah, which we should. Totally. Right. Exactly. Right. But like 18, a bridal canopy, anybody who has an 18-year-old, No way they should be getting married. Yeah.
60-year-old age.
Right. So again, we're not gonna go through it. We're not going to go through it, but right, exactly. When we see these different ages, again, it's not the same way that we think about it. Yeah.
My graduate school roommate wrote a biography of the Hasidic master, and he found that he couldn't deal with the question of adolescence because at 15 he was married with 2 children.
Right, sure.
And consequently, what do you do in terms of how you engage that?
Yeah.
So if you look at the book, which is a wonderful book, there's a gap between learning and then adulthood.
Totally. Right.
There's no such thing as adolescence.
Right.
Especially for us where we have a prolonged
adolescence. Right. And in that world, in a world where people are getting married, like your roommate are getting married at 15 and having children, it's.
My roommate did not. He was writing about.
Oh, he's writing a book. Oh. It was more interesting the way I said it. Okay, well, fine. Okay, this Hasidic master who had the book written about him. I thought he said autobiography. Sorry. Well, it's okay. Let's go with my story. I like my story better. That in that world, when you are married at 15 and already have 2 kids, right, so much of your life is in this second part of this Mishnah, not the first part, whereas in modern day, in the 21st century, so much of our life, not majority, but so much of our life now is spent understanding how to get to that second part, right? That moving on from the adolescence into the adulthood, and figuring out what adulthood means, even way into your whatever's past your 20s. Okay, let's look at the last one. We're going to look at the last one here, and then we'll do Birkat. So someone decide who wants to do Birkat. Ben Bagbag Omer. Great name. It's why it's in here, I'm positive. Hafochba vehafochba decholeba. Now, everybody says dekuleba. I'm sure it's written that way somewhere, but it's not how it's written here. The idea that you should take something and you should turn it because everything is in it. You've all heard this before in many different ways, I'm sure. Sometimes it's a tagline at the end of a sermon or something. But this is a Mishnah in and of itself. But it goes on. Uva techezeh vesiv uvleba. Sorry, I can't see. Umina lo tazua she'ein lecha midah tova heimena. Now, first of all, what I want to point out is that some of these words are in Aramaic, which interestingly enough, we haven't heard in the other Mishnayot that we've looked at today. And I think it's intentional, because not just because we're quoting this particular guy, but also because when you say that you need to turn things, sometimes they're not going to be in the same language that you might learn them in, right? And I think that that's actually an intentional way of saying, like, let's give you a little bit of different language to also turn this around. But anyway, what it's saying here is that you should continue to turn something until you can see everything in it. It's part of the reason that I love being a rabbi, is that I look at the same parshiot every year, go figure, and every year when I get to a parsha, it's different than it was the year before. Sometimes certain things stick out every year because it's the same thing that everyone wants to talk about every year in that parsha. But the parsha itself ends up being different every single year, and I hope that that's how it continues for the rest of my life. And it goes on to say, and look into it, right? Look into that thing and become gray and old therein. Do not move away from it, for you have no better portion than it. So what it's saying is, don't say like, oh, I totally understand Parshat Noach. No need to go back to that. There's nothing new that I can get out of it, right? Rabbi David Lieber, who was the main editor of the Eitz Chaim Chumash and who was a very good family friend of ours, to the day he died, had a Sidur in his hand when he read the Shema. You could all say the Shema without a Sidur in your hand, and I promise you so could he. But the reason that he did it was because he wanted to make sure that every time he said the Shema, a very basic line that he knew backwards and forwards, that he knew that he was saying the words, but that he also saw them, and he could learn them, and he could be able to dive into them. because he lived this. He lived this. And I think that it's a very important way for all of us to think about Torah, that when we go into it, that it shouldn't look the same. It should be new. We shouldn't just share the same nuggets that we share every year about Parshat Bamidbar. We should find new ones. And that's the way that we should continue to be learning all the days of our lives. And so I wanted to end with this because I did want to, I know I started off kind of jokingly about this, but I did want to thank Rabbi Berenbaum for bringing this as a tradition for us last week, because I think it's a beautiful way of going back to a similar text and being able to turn it over and really dig our teeth into it every year. So Shabbat Shalom. Thank you for learning some Mishnah with me. There's a verse that we're going to read at the bottom of page. What's the last page of Mishnah there? 5 something or 2 something? And then we'll do Kaddish Drabana. 256. Is that what you just said? 262. So we're going to read this passage at the end of Pirkei, at the end of the page. Let's read in English just so that everybody can do it all together. Rabbi Hananiah ben Akashia taught, the Blessed Holy One desired to benefit the people Israel. Therefore God gave them the Torah with an abundance of mitzvot. As it is written, Adonai was pleased for the sake of God's righteousness to make the Torah great and glorious.
You've been listening to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. If you enjoy these podcasts, we invite you to write a review on the Apple Podcast website or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information on Temple Beth Am, Los Angeles, please visit www.tbala.org.